For a film with such a sparse cast and completely focusing on liminal spaces, there is a lot to unpack here. I was vaguely familiar with Parsons' Backrooms series on YouTube. Outside of, again, a very surface level understanding of what he created through that series, and having watched that horrible American Horror Stories episode titled The Backrooms, I was not that knowledgeable about the lore associated with the Backrooms outside of the fact that it seems to be hyper fixated on liminal spaces. There's a sense of nostalgia associated to these places, and of course, you no clip into these situations. I'm not sure if my limited understanding of the lore behind the Backrooms aided in my enjoyment or hindered it in some capacity. I enjoy the movie, but probably not to the extent that I wanted to, just because of the hype surrounding the film. That being said, it's still expertly crafted, great acting from everyone involved. There was just a little something about it that didn't make it a home run for me. With a movie built on an internet sensation like this, you're bound to have super fans that are able to just latch on to Easter eggs, and maybe that makes it more enjoyable for them. I would like to just go back, look at Parsons' original series, and see what else I can pick up on in this film. It's not a film like Five Nights at Freddy, where if you don't have a knowledge of the material beforehand, you're going to be completely lost and just kind of wondering what the hell is this going. Um, Even though I didn't see the whole film as a home run, I did immensely enjoy it for what it was. I just wanted to leave the theater on the same high I left Obsession with. The best way to tackle this discussion here is just starting off with things I did really like and what worked for me, and then I can delve into the things that I was a little bit mixed on or on the fence about that maybe just didn't click with me completely. Right off the bat, I cannot say enough about the formatting of this film. I really like the plot structure. I enjoyed how we started the film off with Clark. He's our protagonist. It reminded me of Hellraiser in that you begin the film with one protagonist and then it switches over to a new protagonist. So with Hellraiser, we start off the film with Frank Cotton. He's our protagonist. We get to see him find the puzzle box and then unleash the Cenobites. And then we switch over to Julia being the protagonist, his sister-in-law, and then we switch over to Kirsty, his niece, being the protagonist, and Frank becomes the antagonist throughout this discourse of back and forth. Similar here, we begin our film, The Backrooms, of Clark being our protagonist. He is the owner of Captain Clark's Ottoman Empire. And then towards the third act, Dr. Mary, his therapist, becomes a protagonist, and we almost see the switching of a protagonist to an antagonist where Clark becomes the antagonist for Mary. I have seen some people online complain that they felt that the switch from Clark being the protagonist to the antagonist was a little too abrupt, and they wanted to be more gradual in how he became a villain, essentially. But I would argue that he always had villainous elements to him just because of how we see him conduct himself with his therapist, Dr. Mary Klein. Obviously, he has taken the step to better himself with Dr. Mary Klein, but when she does exercises with him, it's clear he doesn't see his own flaws. He was previously married. That marriage dissolved. It doesn't seem that he is aware of his role in that marriage falling apart. He's not the kindest to his employees either, with Bobby and Kat. And he seems to have just like an antisocial element to him where he is not able to fully just be a people person. We see him get angry with Bobby when he's recording a commercial for the Ottoman Empire. We see that he is struggling in life, and I hate to be blunt, but it's kind of like he lost that life. So we do see the foundation of him becoming a villain. So again, I would counter that argument that from the onset, Clark is not wholly good, and it's not that surprising that he switches over when he's able to find an environment and people that he feels comfortable with. Speaking a little bit more about Dr. Mary Clark, I did also really like how the film gave us inklings of her backstory. Clearly, there's some trauma there that has to be unpacked. That's hopeful. It looks like her mother was agoraphobic and maybe a hoarder, so there's a lot there that happened in her past that maybe led her on this pathway to becoming a therapist to try to see how to understand people and how to better help people. It's enough that we get a nice rounded view of Dr. Mary Klein, but it's not overkill to the point where it overshadows the main storyline. So I really like that. I did think for a minute that we were going to see some weird converging of the plots where maybe Dr. Mary Klein's mother did enter the back rooms. I felt like that would have been very cliche and stereotypical, and I love that the film did not go that route. Um, Obviously, it's something that entered my mind just because of how paranoid her mother was. I'm like, did she also experience something similar to what Clark's experiencing? But it's never really told to us what the mother experienced. So I like that. I like that we did not solidify or felt the need to converge the plots and make everything so clean cut and cliche. So props to the screenwriter for that. Along with the characters and how they unfold throughout the film, another big element I liked is just how the film looks. The Backrooms carries a very drab look of sad yellows, very washed out colors, and it's really just kind of contrasted with the real world where you see very bright, vibrant colors. But even in the real world, there's a sense of unease and uncanny with the clouds not moving, a lot of different shots of high saturation with the color usage. Speaking of the look of the film, I was unaware that it was a period piece going into the movie, but then there is an anchorism that lets me know we're set in the 90s, which again just kind of feeds into this feeling of nostalgia and memories, which is a big motif in this film. So the period piece does aid the film immensely. It also helps with keeping like cell phone usage and things that would have maybe derailed the plot at bay. We don't have Clark being able to research this online or have easy access to getting proof of what's happening to him. So I did like the time period setting. I think it does help the film immensely. And hands down, my favorite element of the film is the found footage um, sequences that are kind of intermixed throughout the film. And I think it's handled in a way that it seems organic for what's going on. We see Clark trying to establish what he's seeing. He's trying to get proof of the fact that the back rooms exist, that he was able to find this location, and he just wants to prove of its existence. And in those like VHS moments is when we get the best scares. We see characters POV, we see them trying to see what's around the corner, and in that we're also like craning our neck to see what's around. Expert usage of shadows and lighting, and just makes the film a lot scarier. I will say I don't think this film could have been sustained if it was entirely shot in the found footage um, format. So I did really like that Parsons has traditional filmmaking and then intersperses with the found footage. The scariest thing in the film has to be the creature designs when we eventually do see them. Um, Very uncanny, very disturbing, and similar to the back rooms, it seems as if something that's not organic is trying to recreate an organic form, and through that process, it's horribly distorted. Similar to how early AI would distort images, would add extra digits, would add extra facial features. That's what we're seeing with these creature designs. It was very reminiscent of George Condo's artwork. You might know him from My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, the Kanye West album. He's the one that did the cover art for that. With his most well-known pieces, he is big on replicating maybe like an eye or a nose and just having multiple of those elements in a face to make it distorted. And one quick side note before I go into my mix, there was a scene set in, I'm assuming, a mental institution where I believe it's a burning memory by the caretaker being played. But I always thought that song was reminiscent of Midnight, the Stars and You, which is famously from The Shining, or used in The Shining. So I just thought, again, those parallels were awesome. Whether it was the caretaker song or was Midnight, the Stars and You, I do see a lot of parallels with the Backrooms and The Shining, this idea of memories coming back to haunt, of misremembering elements of one's life, of trying to duplicate things that obviously can't be duplicated correctly, of being trapped, of not having social skills, of not being able to function in the real world, similar to how Jack Torrance struggles in the real world but then flourishes when he's in the Overlook. We have Clark struggling in the real world, but eventually he finds the back rooms and really flourishes in there because he can treat people like furniture. He doesn't have to answer for his mistakes. And he basically is the master of an area where no one's going to talk back to him. First mix, even I'm on the fence about whether or not to label this as a mixed. Um, we do get to see async, and I know that's huge in Parsons' original YouTube series. Um, but it's very clear they're not sure what's going on, and I kind of like that. I kind of like that the one agent we see from async is very open about saying, we don't know what's going on, we're studying this. Um, there's a thin line that has to be straddled with films that dip into the fantastical, about how much you want to divulge, how much you want to explain, and how much you want to kind of keep close to you. With a film like Us, Jordan Peele's Us, which I do see kind of similar strokes in both of these films. I liked Us. I really liked Us. I thought it was a good movie. I do believe that it does really harm itself when it tries to explain what's going on with the tethered, and the whole concept kind of falls apart because it's not the strongest of concepts. When you start logically thinking about the concept of the tethered, you can easily poke holes in it, and that's where the film really just kind of hits a wall. That being said, I overall really like that movie just because of how it looks, and I like what Jordan Peele was trying to do there. But I understand the very flawed finale, especially with that twist. That's kind of expected. With the back rooms, I could see some people getting upset at how much is not explained about it, but I can also see a lot of people really liking it. I'm still on the fence about whether or not I really appreciated that or I just needed a little bit more. But again, it's such a thin, delicate line to walk. How much do you explain? How much do you keep hidden? Um, that being said, this seems like the jumping off point for a a franchise. I could see this go in many different directions where maybe they could explore a little bit more of what makes the back rooms the back rooms. Um, but again, it's one of those they have to be careful moving forward if that is the route they take. Just because something like Stranger Things also backed itself into a wall. The more it explained the upside down, the more it lost its luster and appeal, and it just kind of became a logical mess that they had to keep explaining and making up rules for to kind of be able to give way to plot devices. So again, I'm still a little bit on the fence about whether or not I really liked it or didn't like it. The fact that we weren't told much, but I think I'm gonna give the edge to like, just because it left me wanting more, and a good film will leave you wanting to revisit. Now, in things I did not like, I did feel like there was a bit of a lag when we switched over from Clark to Mary. We spent so much time with Clark that portion of the film ended on such a high note. We went to Mary's um, protagonist POV. I felt like there were a lot of sequences of her just looking around with a surprised look on her face, her mouth like slightly agape, and it became a little repetitive, especially because we already experienced this with Clark, of his amazement of seeing the back rooms and his wonder of like, what is this? Where am I gonna encounter next? Which I understand Mary has not encountered this, but I wish the film kind of handled this in a better way for the audience. It is her first time experiencing the back rooms. It's not our first time, so I felt like there was a bit of a lag there, and the film quickly remedies um, what it gives Mary's character to do, but for like a solid 10 minutes, I was worried that we were wasting this really interesting character on just exploring the back rooms and looking around, looking surprised. Um, Small nitpick, but that really did kind of take me out of the film. When Mary re-encounters Clark, we have a scene that's very reminiscent of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, of Sally's dinner scene when she's tied up. We have a similar situation happen to Mary, and Clark really lets us know that he's really feeling at home in the back rooms, and he introduces Mary to these different creatures that look like people, obviously distorted people, and he's letting Mary know how he's interpreting the back rooms as like this recreation thing, where it keeps recreating different rooms, but something slightly off about it. They're memories that are distorted to some extent. Throughout this exchange at the dinner scene table, um, Clark reveals things about the creatures, like that they're edible, and he removes like the scalp of one to put it on top of Mary's head. And in that moment, again, because I didn't really vibe with Mary's POV at this point, just because it was just her aimlessly walking around with shock on her face, it made me really miss Clark's character and made me want to see how Clark came to these conclusions and how he came to this full character arc. Um, like I mentioned before, I knew he had villainous elements to him. I don't necessarily need to see his full transformation on the screen from his point of view, but I was very curious as to how he interacted with these creatures and how he came to these conclusions about them, and that's something I really would have preferred to see over Mary's first encounter with the back rooms of just exploring room to room to room and being surprised by the endless appearance of it. My last thing didn't really enjoy, I did not like about the movie, was the character design for Captain Clark, the monster we see that Mary ends up being chased by and ultimately defeating. I felt the other characters we saw, from the man in the wheelchair, the man with the multiple set of eyes, and then the woman in the red pantsuit, were so disturbing and so unique that when we got to see Captain Clark's design, it felt a little lacking. It was missing the elements of the repeated facial features being completely distorted, and I felt like they could have made that creature a lot more scarier. It was effective when it was shrouded in shadows, when it was far away that we couldn't see its features. But there was a sequence where it lunges at Mary, and Mary's able to attack it with this little piece of cement she has on her. Or we got a good look at its face, and something about the eyes just came off as goofy. It did not carry the same uncanny eeriness that the other creatures had. And it's such a shame, because when we eventually do see this replicated memory of Mary's character, her character design is very disturbing and very much in line with what we saw with the other creatures. So I wish the same threads were kind of carried over to the Captain Clark creature. And then this kind of goes hand in hand with the whole thing of what's explained, what's not. Why is Captain Clark's creature so large in comparison to the other ones? Small nitpick, but it just seemed like a simple plot device to allow for that to be the big bad. Those are my thoughts on the back rooms. Maybe my expectations were a little too high just because of the hype surrounding it. Overall, I did enjoy it. Was not. I didn't love it as much as I wanted to, but I did highly enjoy it, and I will definitely be checking this film out again. I think it is one that warrants a repeated viewing, and I'm really hoping with that repeated viewing, maybe my interest in the film will grow, and so will my like of it. That being said, I'm very happy to see YouTubers are able to get these deals to make these films, and for a directorial debut, it is very impressive. That is it for this discussion. So we'll see you guys later. Say bye, Opal.